Well, I look forward to tumbling with Calvin. I have a rock tumbler myself, and it's a joy. It's magic, really. I have one of my products here. It's an agate. I think I found this rock at Halama Beach up on the coast. It's just beautiful to think that this was inside that rough rock all along. Nothing added, only subtracted. May it be so for all of us, yes, that what gets subtracted from us makes us more beautiful. Yeah, a way of looking at how life goes. Lots of metaphors there, yes, Calvin? We'll be playing with them in coming weeks together. So today, I wanted to spend a little time exploring with you the question of how we can do good better. For years, I taught a class at the USC Medical School. Basically, it was do-gooding for doctors. That could have been the title of the class. All about how doctors can be effective as community volunteers. They all get asked to do something, yes, to be on boards of directors or this or that. They're influential, wealthier people generally. So they're thrust into these roles, but not always prepared for them. So that was the purpose of this course. I taught it for many years. And one of the units of the course that I taught was about this whole topic of effective altruism. Have you all heard about this Bitcoin guy who went down in flames? Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried. What a story, right? Wild. You know, all this funny money that his business created, and then funny, it all evaporated, poof, as if it never had been. Weird about money, isn't it? Right? What is it? You start to ask that question when you look at stories like that. Anyway, Sam Bankman-Fried was also pretty deep into effective altruism, but clearly he missed some of the memos, yes? So there are a lot of people starting to question effective altruism because this guy was such a champion of it and was trying to, at some level, practice it with all this funny money that he had for a while. So you might have heard about this movement via that story. But there's much more to it than just Sam Bankman-Fried. Lots more folks, a lot of young folks deep into this. There's even an effective altruism club at USC for students, if you can imagine that, which I think is a really impressive and hopeful thing. It means that young folks want to do good, and they don't just want to do good, they want to be good at it. Yes, they want to do a good job of doing good. And that turns out to be sometimes a little more complex than one might think. And to go deeper with that question of how to do good in the best way is a really good thing. And the movement is all over the world. It's a big deal. I would say it's been embraced by all sorts of folks. But many of the folks who've embraced it, like Sam Bankman-Fried and others, are kind of like what we would call libertarians, yes? They think that the solution to the world's problems is to wipe out government and just let people, if they're going to do good, go for it on their own, right? Years ago when I was working at Stanford, I got very close to a graduate student there. I actually was an undergrad at the time. Anyway, he came to me one day, he says, "Jim, I'm all excited, I read Ayn Rand." Any of you guys ever read Ayn Rand? You know, Fountainhead, etc. It's like the Bible of libertarianism, you know. Greed is good. If everybody's greedy, then everybody will seek out their self-interest, and in the end it will all work out perfectly. So he was all excited because he'd read Ayn Rand. I don't think he was aware of just how unpleasant Ayn Rand was as a person. Not an inspiring person at all. But anyway, he read the book. He said, I'm a libertarian. I go, tell you what, Brian, let's talk about this more, but before we talk about it more, about you being a libertarian, I'd like you to go meditate on this question. You know, it's all about selfishness, right? Being good, right? That's libertarianism. I go, okay, I'd like you to go meditate on this question. What is the self? What is the self? Meditate on that, and then come back to me and we'll discuss this further. Well, the next time we had this chat, some months later, he said, well, Jim, I meditated on that question, and yep, now I am not a libertarian anymore. I go, great, good, fine. I'm glad you came to it, you know, we're exploring this more deeply. Because what is the self? Is the self just me, this little package of flesh and bones here? Just my personality, etc.? Well, our faith teaches us differently, right? Our self, yourself, myself, it's social, it's connected, it's one body, right? Hearkening back to St. Paul's words, right? We're one body with many different gifts. Each part has its gifts. That's another passage in there, right? Similar to the one we just read, that Colleen read. Yeah, I am a social being. Not just that I like mixing it up with other people, but myself is actually made out of these relationships that I have with others. Myself itself is a social thing, a social construct, if you will. If we're looking at ourselves that way, then we start to go deeper and ask deeper questions about how to serve these others with whom I am connected, even if I've only heard of them in the most abstract way. People around the world, how many of us are there? 7 billion? We're all connected. Ourselves are all integral with each other's selves. So how to do that most effectively? So a philosopher at Cambridge, William McCaskill, a young guy, put together what you might think of as a moral calculus of doing good. Wrote a book called Doing Good Better, which I commend to you. And he asks 5 questions, which I think are really good ones to ask. All this, by the way, is this moral calculus, the nitty-gritty of it, is based on this idea of measuring good outcomes, and the unit of measure is the QALY, or QALY, quality adjusted life year, right? So how long you live, but not just how long you live, at what quality do you live, right? What's your quality of life as you live? So that becomes the unit of measure, if you will, in this calculus. So the first question is, how many people, if you're going to do some kind of good, you're going to do some type of intervention in the world, how many people are going to benefit by this action, right? And how much will they be affected by this action, intervention, doing good work? A great question to ask. Now, it may turn out that you're only going to benefit with your good doing only a few people, but you may wind up impacting that small number of people a lot, right? That the impact is great with the small number of people. So that is an adjustment you make. Now, you might have a minor impact on a huge number of people, a minor positive effect on a huge number. That also can be worthwhile, right? Very worthwhile. So, but looking at that, asking that question is a biggie, right? The second question is, what is the most effective thing you can do? And this is a really good question to ask, just the word, how effective are we being in our doing good? I think, the Christ calls us to serve, right? To heal the sick and to feed the hungry, etc. But I think there's another question we have to ask. It's like, okay, does Jesus ask us to be effective at this? Right? It's one thing to just, he told us to do it, okay, let's go do it. But did he expect us to be effective in doing it, right? To have a significant impact on the people that we're trying to serve, a sustainable impact, a long-term impact. That's another level of response to the call of the Christ to serve. So what's the most effective thing that you can do? The most effective thing that you can do. You don't just do it for the sake of doing it, you do it for the sake of it working, having some real impact. The third question that McCaskill asks is this area neglected? Now this gets interesting when I have this conversation with medical students. In a way, I've had it too late by the time we get to this question. So you can apply this to vocational choices, right? At every level of life, right? Vocation as a young person, vocation as a retired person, because we who are retired, that's a time to revisit this question of vocation, yes? In the case of medical students, this is a great case in point. How many people are qualified to go to medical school? A lot. How many spaces are there in medical schools available to them to get in? Not a lot, right? So there's a lot more talent out there, capability of doing medical school among people than there are spaces in medical schools. So then the question is, I want to go to medical school because I want to have a big impact in the world, but it's like, and this relates to the next question, I'll put them together. Question number 4 is, what would have happened otherwise? If you had done nothing, what would have happened? If you had not gone out and done good, what would have happened had you done nothing at all, right? So in the case of medical students, people wanting to be doctors, it's like, maybe, since if you didn't apply to medical school, someone else would have gotten in and done the same work and done it well, right? There's no lack of people lining up to go do this work, right? So maybe you should look within and kind of go, is this the best use of my time and energy? Because there are all sorts of other work out there, all kinds of work that I could do that's neglected, that's does not have people knocking down the doors to do it, right? Work that nobody else is doing or not very many other people are doing that's worth doing to serve the world, right? So that's when you go deeper with this vocational question, and it gets back to being effective too. How can I be most effective, me, in doing good in the world, given my skills, interests, proclivities, right? We're different. All of us are different, as the scripture tells us, yes? Different gifts of the Spirit for different people, because we're different. So looking within and saying, what's special about me, what's different about me that can be put to work for the common good in service to others that is unique to me and is the best use of my energies and abilities. Now for some, and this is where these wealthy Silicon Valley types are deep into this, there's like, well, what I'm good at is making boatloads of money. So I'm going to go make a ton of dough and then give it away effectively. Well, that is a beautiful calling. That really is. When I was working at Stanford as the progressive campus pastor there, I had a young woman, student, friend of mine, who came to me one day. I knew her already, but she came to me. She says, Jim, I would like to have a chat with you about philanthropy. And I go, great. And what motivates you to have this chat? She says, well, my family is very, very, very rich. And I don't need to work ever to make money for the rest of my life. But what I have decided is that really what I want to do, what I think I could be good at, is giving it away effectively and intelligently. So I'm here to learn from you what I can about doing that, because I was well known in the community at that point for the work I did with homeless people. So we had the chat, and she has gone on and done just that. She's put all of her energy and resources with her family's foundation into education reform, because she thinks that's so important. Serious woman about doing good in the best way that she could, not somebody else, but her. You know, she could have done all sorts of stuff with her life, right? All sorts of professions. But she realized that given her place in the world and her own nature, this was the best thing she could do for humanity, was to be good at giving away money. You go, Susan Sandler. So, those are 4 questions. The last question is, in his calculus is, what would success mean? What would it mean to succeed at doing good in the way you want to do it? And what are the chances of that success? It's a really interesting question to ask. Now, it might be that you have a high bar for success, but a low bar of achieving it, a low likelihood of achieving it, right? So a big project that would have huge impact on humanity, but the likelihood of it coming to fruition, very low, right? That, even though it's a low chance of success, if the impact is so gargantuan, it may be worth spending your life chasing it, right? Putting your energy into that. So those are the folks going after the big cures for the big diseases, right, that are tough to fix. Curing cancer, et cetera. The impact would be gargantuan, but getting there, actually succeeding at it, maybe not so much of a likelihood. On the other hand, you could have something else that would benefit a lot of people in a small way, but has a high chance of being achieved, right? Or would have high impact on a small number of people, but have a high likelihood of success. So there's all different ways that this trade-off could be calculated, if you will. In addition to these questions, I think there are other questions to look at in terms of doing good in the best way. And a big one, I think, is one that has really been missed by a lot of these folks, these young folks who are into effective altruism. And that is that there's just not enough discussion in that community about public policy, right? The focus is on philanthropy, it's on charity, it's on individual donations going to the best causes, and that's great, we need it all. But then there's the reality that, just to give you a little taste of this, that's right, Bread for the World calculated the percentage of private donations of food to feed the hungry versus the government's food stamp and school lunch program. Can you guess what it is? What percentage of the federal food budget for the poor is represented by all the charitable food money and food donated to food banks, Samaritan, like our Samaritan Center here right down the street? What do you think the percentage of that is versus what the government spends on food for the poor? Any guesses? Pardon? Much smaller. Yeah. It's 6%. 6%. Now that's a fudgy figure. You know, I don't trust it, but I think it's in the right ballpark, is my own guess. So the point being is if you want, in America, if you want to feed the poor, you have to vote. Right? And you have to put money, maybe a lot of money, into campaigns to elect candidates who will protect the the food stamp program and the school lunch program. And during COVID, the eligibility was relaxed so that many more people could get food via food stamps, right? Child poverty went down by something like 20% during COVID because of that. It was unbelievable. And now those provisions are expiring, right? So we're going to go back up. We're going to have worse child poverty. And it's because of politics, right? So it just turns out that, yes, we have to support Samaritan Center, and we have to do that because that's part of the solution, but the bigger part of the solution is the food stamp program, right? And it's efficient, right? You have a card and you take it to the store. Donated food, you and me go out and buy food, and then we disorganize it into our shelves, and then we reorganize it into bags, and we take it to the Samaritan Center, and then they reorganize it again, and then disorganize it some more to give to the low-income people. Extraordinarily inefficient, still necessary to putty up the gaps in our system, absolutely necessary, but the point is, to be efficient and effective and sustainable, we have to be political, right? And that's something missing from the effective altruism community, much less emphasis on that. So we are called to serve, and I'll just put it out there, I think we are called to be effective at serving, right? To do a good job of that, and to think about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we are called to make the best use of the gifts that each of us was given. And that's true for each of us in this community now, right? How do we do that in a way that's the best for who each of you and I are? How can we put our uniqueness as individuals into the service of others in a way that works the best for the common good? That's the challenge before us. Amen.